If you look at your favorite artists and you wonder, how do they draw clothes like this? And how do I make my own clothes look just as good as theirs? Well, there's actually tips that these artists use to make their clothes look effortlessly amazing. And you can do it too, because in this video, I'm going to show you professional clothing drawing tips that every artist should know. And I hope that by the end of this video, your character won't be shirtless anymore. If this is your first time here, hello, we are Draw Anime Academy and we help you to draw and have fun. So if you like this content, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Tip number 1, tension and compression folds. Now you may have heard about the 7 basic folds like the pipe fold, diaper fold, zigzag fold, etc. But sometimes you might wonder, is this a drop fold or a pipe fold? Or wait, I can't tell if this is a zigzag or a spiral fold. And things get really confusing when certain folds just meld and mesh together into a different fold completely. So instead of trying to figure out what fold is what and what kind of specific thing it is, it's easier to think, is this a tension or a compression fold? Tension folds are caused by gravity or action. You can find where these tension folds are by spotting mostly straight diagonal folds that point to a certain area like shoulders or knees or an arm moving, and those are tension points. There can also be multiple tension points, and a good example is being a diaper fold, which has 2 tension points. Compression folds happen when there is excess fabric that doesn't know what to do with itself. This doesn't feel right, so it ends up just bunching together. Oh well. Compression folds also happen when you have a pinch on the middle of your torso or a pillow. And if you look closely, the way how they're stacked kind of look like how bricks are stacked together to create a wall. And sometimes you can find that these diamond shapes also look like they're being squished together. Help! I find that instead of drawing lines to show where the folds are, I can apply them just by drawing these shapes instead, which makes it so much easier. Some compression folds include the zigzag fold, the spiral fold, and the half lock fold. What I like to do is think of folds like a sandwich. Tension and compression is the bread holding the rest of the folds together, because the 7 basic folds are caused by tension and compression. So I like to figure out tension and compression first, and then figure out what certain folds happen in between. If you're finding this video helpful, we teach this in our anime art school along with so much more content. So if you want to take your drawing skills to the next level and get to drawing your characters and stories, go check it out in the description box below. Tip number 2 is wrapping the folds around the form. If you're wondering why your clothes never look like they're on the body, or they just look flat, here's some tips that can help you with making clothes feel more 3-dimensional. Clothes wrap around a body, and if you don't know what the body is doing underneath of the clothing, it's really difficult to draw convincing folds. So I always make sure to draw the mannequin first, which is just the base of the body. And one of the simplest forms you can use for the body is cylinders and boxes. It may seem basic, but this really helps with establishing the perspective of the body, like what direction is the torso moving, or are the arms moving towards us or going away from us. If you're drawing sleeves, for example, wrapping folds around the cylinder helps with showing what's going on with the arm. This is also useful when you have a body that's twisting, which looks kind of like a towel being wrung out. And if you want to learn how to draw bodies and just building a basic figure, you can check out this video on the corner right over there. And if you really want to know the secret to making clothes look 3-dimensional, show form using overlaps. Notice that in this drawing, there's bumps on the edges caused by the folds wrapping over the form and to the other side. Overlaps usually have lines that look like a T-shape. These T-shapes appear anywhere a fold intercepts another fold, and this is a really effortless way to make your clothes look really satisfying. And one of my favorite folds just to show overlaps is a fold that we like to call a hook, which is basically a fold that wraps around a cylinder to the other side, which kind of creates like a little triangular shape on the edge, and it just looks really, really good, and you can basically use it anywhere, such as on sleeves, on the body, basically anywhere, and it just looks effortlessly really nice. Now the third and final tip is material differences. If you're wondering why the sweater doesn't look thick and soft, it's because the folds indicate that this is a thin material. Whether you're drawing denim, leather, cotton, or soft, thick fabrics, the type of fabric will determine the frequency of the folds and what shapes they create. For example, a button-up shirt will have sharper, closer together, and larger amount of folds, while a soft hoodie will have rounder folds that are spaced further apart. The button-up shirt will have sharp diamonds and triangles, while the soft sweater has rounder diamonds and triangles. As I mentioned before, we teach this in our anime art school. This is one of the clothing drawing classes, and I cover a lot of different things like tension and compression, as we talked about in this video, folds, suits, different types of outfits, and I give you a lot of awesome assignments that will help you to get better with drawing clothes and demystify this kind of stuff. So if you are interested, go ahead and check out the links in our description for Anime Art School. Now that we've covered these tips and concepts, let's actually put these into practice, because rather than just knowing the information, you're going to see the most improvement once you apply these over and over again. So I'm going to demo this for you so that when you draw clothes later in the future, you can look back at this and be like, oh, now I know how to apply it. I'm just going to keep practicing. So the first stage of the study is drawing a mannequin, and I'm just keeping it really simple, and I'm just making sure that my proportions and my forms are generally in the correct place. So if you want to know how to do this, you can check out the video, If You Hate Drawing Figures, Use This Method. That's one of our newest videos, so you can check that out. I cover drawing bodies using this process, and it's just something that is really simple to use, and I can adjust things really simply before moving forward. I'm starting off with breaking down the body with mostly cylinders. Even the torso can be simplified to a cylinder. You can use boxes or a mix between boxes and cylinders. Totally up to you, no pressure. This is just for you to set up the figure in a way that you understand it. So I'm mostly going to be simplifying the arms and legs as cylinders and torso as kind of like a partial box and cylinder. I kind of go over this once again in that video, so once again you could just check that out for more of a detailed process. But here I'm just establishing my pose. I'm thinking, are my proportions right? Is the lower body, about the same size as the upper body or the same length as the upper body in comparison? What's the weighted leg versus what's the leg that's more of support? So I'm just figuring out those things out, and I can change this at any point that I want. I'm noticing that I made my pose a little bit too straight, so later on I actually did end up changing it, which is a super simple fix. For the hands and the feet, I'm just adding in a simple shape just to get something in, but I'm not going to go and detail it. So this is where I changed the upper body as well as a bit of the pelvis. I'm just twisting it or tilting it a little bit to the side so it feels like he's kind of taking a step and is leaning towards one side a little bit more. The other pose made it feel like he was just standing. So you can see that I'm readjusting this arm, and I'm pretty much ready to go with this whole mannequin here. Now once I'm satisfied, I'm going to draw on top of this drawing, and I'm going to start marking out where my tension points are, and I'm using a red little X with a circle around it, and I'm marking out the shoulders, the elbow, the knee, and the wrist on our left. And then I'm going to be drawing an outline of the outfit. So rather than starting off with folds, I'm just drawing out the overall mass and also figure out the different pieces of this outfit. So notice that I'm not even getting to folds just yet, and notice I'm not even getting to any detail. This phase is all about just setting things up so that when you add detail, it's a lot easier. So I'm noticing, the trench coat, the shirt, the pants, there's only like 3 layers to this outfit, so it's generally pretty simple, and I'm just figuring out how far or how thick is the cloth layer onto the body, and that's why I make sure to still keep my mannequin drawing underneath and still roughly visible. Notice that my lines are also a little bit slow, and that is completely fine. I'm not trying to make or rush the drawing, I'm just trying to understand it, and that's really the main thing when it comes to doing studies like this. When I'm doing studies, I make sure to take my time, not too much to the point where I'm being perfectionist, but enough time where I'm like, okay, do I have the first layer of the outfit? Do I have my second layer? Do I have my third layer? And this is all just to kind of optimize your drawing time so you don't get lost in the weeds, right? The thing that I keep in mind is drawing a bunch of cylinders, especially for the sleeves. We do not want to make sleeves completely flat. They're not lines, they are forms, and we're trying to show that illusion. So when I'm drawing pants, like the cuff of the pant here, I'm showing the end of the cylinder. When I'm showing the sleeves, especially on the left where the arm is raised, I'm showing the inside of the sleeve, and that is basically symbolic of the end of our cylinder, right? So everything is basically just a basic form. You're just overlapping and making it not look like a basic form. You're trying to finesse it a little bit. Notice that all the feet that I'm adding is very, very basic, barely any detail at all. In fact, I only draw shoes towards the end of the drawing. So once again, I'm just keeping things just its main shape for now, and then I can move on. Now it's time to actually add in some of the details like the folds and extra stuff like what's on the coat. So I'm taking an eraser and I'm just erasing the bits, the mannequin sketch underneath even lighter. This is just to help me keeping things organized visually. I still keep the drawing underneath because I want to use that to show the folds. I don't abandon this drawing just yet because I like the cylinders underneath and I really want to add those in. I'm just adding in extra details like the collar of the jacket. I like thinking of clothing or just clothes in general just like puzzles. If you look at sewing patterns is just a bunch of puzzles to sew together, right? And here I'm thinking about my tension, I'm thinking about my compression, I'm thinking where's my tension, where's my compression. I have compression in this elbow area over here, and when I'm adding in these folds on this arm, I'm making sure to add in those overlaps. So look at that right here, overlap, overlap, overlap. Look at those, find those T shapes that we've talked about before, and that'll give instant depth. And one thing to really keep in mind about when it comes to drawing folds is to not get too detailed. Now I know it's really tempting, you want to draw every single line, you want to draw every single fold that's in your reference, but trust me, the more you add detail, the busier your drawing is going to get, and it actually will feel like your drawing is lost. You won't really know what you're trying to show. So I really try to simplify it down to tension, compression areas, that's the main priority, and then any folds that I want to show later, then I add. Like for instance, this shirt where it's crumpled up in the lower abdomen area, I add it because I like seeing the compression area right there. So I add it in there, but then you'll see that the majority of this outfit so far is actually very simple. There's a lot of empty spaces. And one thing that I want to show in this area is how pants, these folds right here actually gravitate towards this tension point right here. So always notice for those diagonal lines, notice for folds that are being pulled to a certain point, even if it's a very subtle fold. That's nuance, and that is something that you can keep in mind for later. One thing that I did not mention in this video yet is the seam lines. Notice that I added a line in the middle of the pants right here. Seam lines are actually one of the little tricks that I wish I knew earlier, because seam lines actually really describe the form really well within the shape of the cloth. So rather than trying to overlap all the time on the edges and show overlap that way, you can use seam lines to describe folds that you didn't even draw, or you don't even need to draw. So that's just something that I find interesting. But anyways, now that we have the drawing, we can add some extra stuff like, adding some shading, right? For me, I like adding some shading in, the little eyes of the folds, which are like little shadow pockets that I talked about earlier. I like to mask out one value for the shirt because it's much darker than the jacket. And sometimes all you really need for shading clothes is just simple value blocking. What that means is nothing too crazy in terms of rendering, but just adding your base and your shadow. That's it. I find that shading clothes just really simply like this actually makes the drawing feel a little bit more finished than if I were to just leave it as a line drawing, but that's completely up to you. If you want to keep it as a line drawing, that's totally fine. Especially if you're maybe a little bit intimidated, but just take things one thing at a time. This is just to help you to apply the information that we talked about earlier. And that is it. If you liked this content, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. If you found this helpful, let us know in the comments down below. Don't forget to check out our books or our classes in the description links down below, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye!